his future. But speaking of Matthew Bergeron, I do want to get into Falcons Rookie Minicamp a little bit, just kind of go over the highlights of that. We saw Matthew Bergeron at left guard doing his thing. He was with Javon Gwynn, who was getting snaps at center. There we saw video of them via the Atlanta Falcons Twitter page, running a couple of stunts, doing a couple of drills, looking good. We saw Bijan Robinson out there doing his thing. And did you have any major takeaways from Falcons Rookie Minicamp? I mean, we had Josh Kendall today on the morning shift, and he said, look, it's exciting times. It's good to see those guys out there, and, it's good to see them do their thing. But at the end of the day, they're taking on other rookies, taking on other, tryout guys as well who might be trying out for the team. But at the end of the day, these are kind of, he called them glorified walkthroughs. So do you have any major takeaways from Rookie Minicamp? And there is one signing we need to get into in a little bit, but I'll save that for just a second here. But any major takeaways from Falcons Rookie Minicamp?
Yeah, I would say that Bijan's comments really stood out to me, where he said, hey, Arthur Smith is going to use me everywhere.
Yeah.
And I think, to me, that is not a surprise. That is something that I've tried to say on this podcast and on the air multiple times, that, look, this is more than a running back. You didn't just draft a guy to carry the ball 20 times a game. You drafted a guy that's going to catch the ball out of the backfield. It's going to do everything you need him. Probably line up at, I say catch the ball out of the backfield. I think that's being kind of thrown out there, and people are undervaluing the fact that this guy's going to line up outside in the slot.
Yep.
Probably on the outside at times, and he's going to run routes like a receiver, not even as a running back. He's going to roll back in at times and be a blocking back and pick up blitzes. So I think that stood out to me, because we've maybe have finally gotten through to the, and I get it, because I'm not a drafted running back in the top 10 guy. I've said that as many times as I can. But maybe that group that just sees him as a running back will kind of open their eyes that this is a guy that's not just a running back. And that was my number one takeaway from training camp, that he's being very public with it. And maybe it's just kind of starting to sink in with a lot of people that, hey, this is what this guy is going to be. I would say that the second takeaway I have is Matthew Bergeron, and to a lesser extent, Javon Gwynn, who we can get into in a minute about his move to center, because he's an undersized guy as a guard. But I would say that Bergeron, talking a little bit about his move to guard, and he really clearly has either been coached up or has done enough film study or has talked to guys or just knows enough about the game of football, which is kind of something you want when you're your potential offensive lineman who's starting offensive lineman that is a rookie, right, to kind of know. But he's like, look, there's some things at tackle. The game is slower, and it's more about getting your feet out and set. He goes, life comes at you quick in that guard position. And by the way, me and Mike Johnson are talking about this, and I don't want to steal his thunder, but he seemed to think that there are some ways where the ceiling is lower inside, though, because those guys that are lining up on the outside, for the most case, are extremely athletically talented as far as the defensive ends you're going against. And I don't think that's a knock on defensive tackles. No, I just think that that is a point about, there's a lot less Aaron Donalds out there and Grady Jarrett's and whatever potentially Jalen Carter could be. Those guys with that freak potential, that just raw, pure athleticism where they are so gifted. Those guys, while everyone in the NFL is like that, the guys like the Aaron Donalds of the world are the top shelf. And so you do come across less of those guys. So just Bergeron, to me, to kind of put a bow on this, he really has an understanding, no pun intended. There's real understanding of him of what it takes to make that adjustment or that switch or that move or however whatever adjective you want to use to describe what he's doing. He really has a grasp of what it's going to take. And I think that's a good thing because I think he is a guy I think he's a very smart, motivated, and somewhat nasty. He's got the nastiness that needs to come along a lot of times with those positions. And I love that attitude. I love that mindset. I mean, that is what we've been missing, I think, at times recently, for this team. I think he could step in and be that Harvey Dahl type player, which is kind of a throwback if you're an old school, not even an old school fan, if you're just a fan of the early Matt Ryan days and the end of the Mike Vick days, you know exactly who the hell Harvey Dahl is.
Oh,
and
yeah.
how good of a player he was and what he meant and how he played. He was the antithesis of playing to the edge of the whistle, and he had that nastiness about him. And I'm really hoping that Matthew Bergeron can be a guy that that brings that back to this team, which just desperately been missing on that interior.
He's got the smarts, but he's also got the physicality and the nastiness about him that you want all your offensive linemen to have, and always being ready to get after it. So I am really, really excited to see Matthew Bergeron. I think he's going to be really good at guard. And, you know, the old adage and the old rule of thumb is tackles who move into guard usually are pretty successful. And even though you mentioned how the change kind of works and everything starts to come at you a little bit faster and those defensive tackles get to you a little bit faster and it's a lot faster moving on the inside than it is the outside. You talked about all that. But like you said, seems like Matthew Bergeron has the intelligence and the physicality and the mindset to handle all of it. So really excited to see Matthew Bergeron. And also just kind of looking forward ahead a little bit, I'm really excited about this offensive line because it feels like with Matthew Bergeron, I have a real feeling that he's going to be successful left guard. And we've been trying to lock up that left guard spot for a couple of years now. So to finally get some, and we're going to have pretty good continuity this year, but moving forward past this year, it seems like we can maybe finally get that continuity across the offensive line, not just for a year, but maybe for, years to come, and have that maybe offensive line of the future that we've been looking for with Bergeron, with Lindstrom, with McGarry, hopefully with Dahlman at center, and Jake Matthews. We'll see how much longer he can be a left tackle, but it seems like he's got at least a few more years left in him. So at least for the short-term future, maybe at least 3 years, if we're included Jake in this conversation, that we can have that offensive line where we know the guys are going to be on the offensive line and they can really start to build some chemistry and become a real cohesive unit altogether. So I think that's what I'm really most excited for, not having that question mark anymore that it seems like we have kind of had at left guard for the past couple of years. So that's really what excites me about the offensive line. But I do want to transition over to another note that came out of Falcons Rookie Minicamp as we wrap up that conversation, and that's Slade Bolden. Slade Bolden was not a rookie, but he was trying out for the Falcons. Obviously, a former Alabama player as well. I believe he got drafted by the Baltimore Ravens, if I'm not mistaken. So he spent some. He was out there at Falcons Rookie Minicamp trying out, and he actually got signed by the Atlanta Falcons. And I mean, Beau, do you see a thing where do you think he's just going to end up being maybe a training camp body, or does he you think have a good chance at making some noise here and making a roster spot and maybe making an impact on this Falcons roster?
Well, when we did talk to Josh Kendall, who covers the Falcons as a beat writer, he seemed to think that they needed a little more from that, and that he was a guy that could come in here and prove himself. I think Bolden was a good player, not a great player at Alabama. I thought he had some drops at times that he shouldn't have at Alabama. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but I think if he can come in here and run good routes, run sharp, crisp routes, be sure-handed, and then look, let's go through the receiver, because you got Drake London, you got Mac Hollins, and you got Scotty Miller, and after that, if you whatever you, I don't know how you want to count, how you want to count our guy Kyle Pitts, but he's not a receiver. He's not going to line up at receiver. He's still a tight end.
Yeah,
You got
Hodge as well.
Well, you got Frank Darby, and you got Penny Hart, who you signed, and Jared Bernhardt, who made the team last year. And so there's some other guys that we've obviously mentioned, Drake. You got some guys, but there's an opportunity, and there's also an opportunity for, if Slade Bolden really wants to make this roster, he's going to go out there and find a way to contribute on special teams as well.
That's a good point.
You have to do that. I don't think Frank Darby is guaranteed a job on this team. I don't think, I know that Keelan Harris isn't. I don't think Penny Hart is, although I think Penny Hart has a good shot. Xavier Malone and Justin Marshall, I mean, those guys aren't guaranteed spots. So he's got an opportunity, but he's going to have to go earn it. He's going to have to be sure-handed, run crisp routes, contribute on special teams. He has to have a good camp, and that's what it's about. That's what training camp's about, is these battles with these fourth and fifth receivers and a chance to really make their name. So he's got a chance, but he's got to. I'm not going to say this guy's going to contribute right now. He's going to have to go prove it during training camp, and it's going to start in the off with the OTAs and the mini camp that you'll have in the middle of June, and then he'll have another shot to prove it at training camp. All those things go into with preseason games to what his actual chances are of being on this roster come September.
We shall see what our guy Slade Bolden can do on this roster. See if he can make some noise and add to this Falcons wide receiver group, talented group already. And if he can come in and make some noise, that'll say a lot about where he's at right now. But do want to get